let's get back to some of the process, right? So you said the first part of the book was identification of grief, and then there's some more of the process. Let's talk about a little more of the process. I think we had covered the first point.
Well, again, once we get through grief, we understand what grief is, and we understand where we are on the grief curve and that kind of thing. Then we can start. Then we start the process of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that can take a lot of forms. I mean, because being uncomfortable can be okay. So I'm in this grief process. I'm supposed to be grieving. I've experienced this loss, but I don't want to live here for the rest of my life. How do I get out of it? There can be guilt associated with that. There can be reluctance associated with that. There can be the opinions of other people, by the way, associated with that. You're going to hear that. People are going to hear that, by the way. Everybody has an idea, it seems like, about what you should be doing and how you should be doing it, the timeline you should be doing it on. And again, I'm not going to get into all that here, but that's not the case. Okay. There is no timeline. There is no process. There is no set of rules. Okay. But you have to be comfortable. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because getting out of that grief process, well, you're uncomfortable as can be being in it, right? Because it's not something you ever wanted. It's not something you expected. It's not something you signed up for. It's not something you wanted to do. And then you have to get out of it. And that is another whole other level of being uncomfortable, because there are things you're going to have to do and decisions you're going to have to make, and things, feelings you're going to have to feel inside yourself. And feeling your feelings, by the way, is a large part of that. But being familiar with all of that, and familiarity is a big way of learning to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Then you have to understand there's a power of discovery that's involved. You're going to discover things about yourself you never realized. You're going to discover solutions you never thought of. You're going to discover things that you might want to do, but you're not sure how to go about doing them. And then you're going to have to figure out how you're going to the way out. What's that look like for you? What's the path forward look like? I give you some specific steps and some thoughts inside the book that I don't want to disclose here yet, because I want people to read the book, quite frankly. Sure. But inside the book, it'll show you, give you different exercises and different ways to do that. You have to get out of your head. You have to understand the difference between recovery and restoration. And then you have to decide, what is your next going to look like? What is your next going to be? What do you really want in life? I mean, and the last point is it really is up to an individual, really is up to a person. You have a choice. You can stay right where you're at and stay there if you're happy there and comfortable there. I'm not going to say that's okay, because I don't believe people should stay stuck in grief. That's my personal opinion. Or you can move forward and you can create a life that you really want to live, and that you're going to love living. And you can learn to let go of some of that stuff in the past. It doesn't mean, by the way, letting go of the past doesn't mean forgetting memories. You're always going to have those. Okay. And those are good. There's nothing wrong with that, but it does mean not being obsessed with those and not trying to recreate what you had before in the future. Maybe that's a better way to say that. I'm not sure.
Right. You're never going to have what you had.
No.
But you can have something else.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about two terms you just mentioned as part of the process. The difference between recovery and restoration.
Yeah.
Because recovery, to me at least, and I'll let you get into it, but from recovery is, well, you know what? Why don't we just have you get into it? Because recovery for me is like is I'm finding something maybe that I had before. I'm recovering something I had before, but restoration is a whole different topic. And so let's talk about the two terms. Let's talk about what they are, the differences, and why you need to have both if you want to complete the process.
Yeah, and again, this is based on my personal experience and the way my mind works and the way I think and believe and all that. But for me, recovery is healing up. It's healing more than anything else, probably. I mean, you're going to have scar. You've been wounded, right? You've been seriously wounded. Maybe almost fatally wounded. Okay, and you have to recover from that, and that takes time because that doesn't happen overnight. So recovery is healing. It's getting back to a place to where your body starts to feel good, so your mind can start feeling better and start feeling good, and you can start making rational decisions. Some of the decisions I made when I was in the middle of the grief were stupid, and they were dumb. I talk about one or two of them in the book, and I go back and look at them today and I just shake my head. Like, why did I ever do that? But that's what grief does to you. It has that kind of an impact on you. So recovery is getting out of that And then once I believe once you start the recovery process, then you're ready for the restoration process. You're ready to start creating that life that you really want, and to go after those things, and to understand and accept, and understand, own, and accept that you can be happy, that you can have a life, that you don't have to stay stuck here. You don't have to carry a burden of guilt with you. You don't have to be sad all the time, or depressed, or angry, or whatever the feeling is that you're feeling, and those kind of things, And I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but the restoration process, it's not a process. Basically, it's something. Well, it is and it isn't. It's something that happens, something that occurs, but it'll be more than you had before, and you'll know it when it happens to you and when it starts to happen to you. I'm in the middle of it. I mean, I really am. I'm in the middle of it right now, in the middle of my life here, and when I look back downstream, I can see it clearly. It's hard to see it going forward. Usually, you see it one step at a time as you move forward with it, but you can see it clearly once you look back downstream and kind of see what's happened and see the process.
Sure. No, I think it's an important distinction to know those two things. And, I think that lends us to maybe a next question. So a lot of people try to do this on their own, right? We're trained to kind of do it on our own. I mean, society more is now about mental health, and they're asking about helping. Well, let's talk about some of the importance of finding a coach, a true coach, right? Because,
Right.
That's maybe specialized in this area. And again, everybody's a life coach, but there's very few people that are really trained or have experienced or have created a process. Well, let's talk about your thoughts on why isn't it's important to work with someone at whatever level of that can help people, go through the process. They can help them identify where they're at. That can help them move through it, understanding that this is not a set process, like you've said many, many times, because there's a lot of programs out there like, well, you got to go through this first, and you got to do this, and you got to do this, and they feel bad when they can't complete those things. So let's talk about why it's important for people to reach out and to find someone to help them take through this process.
Well, just so you know, I have two coaches. I actually have three coaches, now. But I have the coaches I hired for a reason, because I didn't have the skill set or the knowledge, right, to do whatever it is I wanted to accomplish, number one. Number two, those coaches provide me with tools and resources. Number three, those coaches are not afraid to tell me when, and by the way, this is really important with a coach. You got to find somebody that's not afraid to tell you when you're not doing it right. Okay, or when you need to do something different, or need to look at it. Somebody that can be bold with you. And I've never been offended by what a coach tells me, but when somebody tells me something that I have a belief system or a belief, and one of my coaches tells me, no, you need to look at it this way, and here's why. I always am receptive to that, because those people, those coaches I hired them for a reason. I hired them to improve, but again, for tools, for resources, and to have somebody to talk to. That understands and that gets it, because if you haven't been through it, it's one thing talking to somebody who has not been through it, or wants to help you and ask you questions and goes back to your childhood and all that. But it's another thing entirely to talk with somebody who has been through what you're going through and what you're dealing with and can relate. There's empathy and there's sympathy, right? Sympathy is feeling sorry for somebody. Empathy is understanding what they're dealing with and then helping them through that. And I think that's why coaches are so critically important. That's why I hired them.